Why didn't you condemn slavery? Why did you create rules explaining to humans how you wanted them to conduct their slave trade?
Why did you not condemn slavery? Why did you instead give them rules for how they were to conduct their slave trade? That's a rough reading of it. If you really look through the Levitical laws, and I'm sure somebody will be happy in the comments to challenge me on this, but if you really look through the laws, it's completely different. The slavery that's allowed for in Scripture is nothing like the transatlantic slave trade and the absolutely inhumane human trafficking that occurred then, or even that occurs today. And the laws limiting things were to prevent that type of slavery from occurring. And instead saying there's going to come a time where people will get themselves, if they don't obey the laws of, treating each other with respect and love and following my ways, you're going to get yourselves into problems. You're going to get yourselves into issues where you owe debts that you cannot possibly pay. And there's got to be some provision for that. But at that point, you've already rejected God's ways. You've already been living unrighteously. You're already living against the way God intended for you to live. And you're not loving God. You're not loving your neighbor well if you're living in this way. And if you get to that point, the only thing left to do is to put yourself in a situation like, essentially like today, where like you can have your wages garnished if you're not paying child support, or if you skip out on your, I think they can do it if you skip out on student loans and stuff long enough to. And so that type of issue is what is being pushed against there, that God is providing a means for people to get back what they're being ripped off if somebody is not paying back their debts. Even in that, though, there were provisions in the law saying there are limits to this. In the year of Jubilee, you have to release all slaves. You have to release all indentured servants. They're not permanently your property. They were working for you for a time, and you had an extended, in that culture, you had an extended sway over them, that all of their work was owed to you, and you were to provide for them and treat them well. But above and beyond that, there was a call for releasing them and even restoring any land or anything else that was sold out of the family or anything. Even if they did it unrighteously, even if they sold off their family's heritage, you were still supposed to give it back in the year of Jubilee. So he did. The accounts are not the way they're portrayed by somebody reading through and being like, oh, slavery, look at that. It's not really how it worked if you go through and read the context. And I'm not saying like, well, if you just understand the way I want to spin doctor it. I mean, legitimately, you read the context and that understanding of what the way she's painting it doesn't hold up. In the New Testament, even more, there are some revolutionary concepts about how to treat one another, and that membership in the church was meant to transcend. Your status in the kingdom was meant to be equalized amongst each other, far above and beyond how whether or not what your social power dynamics were. And there's a whole bunch of things about that. Read Philemon. It's all through there. But even when you look at the Exodus, Egypt is punished for having, tortured slaves the way Israel was, serving them. It started off as more indentured servitude, and it got to something horrible. And ultimately, they're punished for, Egypt is punished for treating God's people that way, because that's not the way we should treat people. That looked a bit more like the way the transatlantic slave trade did over the last couple centuries. And that is the kind of thing that is condemned in Scripture. So anyway, her quick painting of that it doesn't hold up. It's a straw man.